and he's passionate about how to shape the future of technology, environment, and society. And apart from that, he has founded the transit tech company TransLoc, for which he was named Champion of Change by the White House. So, welcome Josh with his talk about technology and business in service to human enlightenment and ecological flourishing. Happy to have you here, Josh.
Thank you. Well, it's my honor to have you at your maximum drunkenness this evening, which I consider to be a distinct advantage. Okay, so this is the Earth. It is actually, we take it for granted, but it is actually the only living biosphere in the known universe. So for all of our telescoping and searching stars, we can't find another one with any life. Another fact, it's dying right now, which means every day it's a little more dead than it started. There's a species that's extinct or about to be extinct. Everything's a little more polluted from the water to the air to our own bodies. The primary culprit of the dying of the planet would be this thing called the economy that we're all participating in together. So here in the year 2018, the vast majority of the economy, 99.999 whatever percent of it, is engaged in turning the living biosphere into gadgets, garbage, and cash. Now, I'm not saying we're not making great stuff. Like, I own a lot of great stuff. We all own some great stuff, right? And I'm not saying we're not throwing great parties while we do this. I've been to some wild parties. We're having a good time down here. But at some point, our human productivity, our human work hours, our human culture needs to somehow be harmonized with the fragility and irreplaceability of this ecosystem. Now, I spent a lot of time in Silicon Valley, and they have a backup plan there in case the Earth thing doesn't work out. It's Mars. So, Mars, I'm all for going there. I'm actually a limited partner in a space-focused venture capital fund, so I totally believe in Mars and space. The only problem is, it's not that great an idea to leave a dying planet for an already completely dead planet. Anyone notice that about Mars? Completely dead. The good news is, we'll have to get good at regenerating ecosystems in order to make Mars something that you want to live on. More good news, we have a place to practice regenerating ecosystems right now, which is, of course, Earth. Now, instead of doing that, what we're doing is actually turning the Earth into Mars. That's more of what's going on than not. So this is a kind of a famous picture of tar sands extraction. So there used to be a forest here, but it was in the way of this oil that was a few feet down below the surface. So if you're a fossil fuel mining engineer, they'll rename the forest because they don't want to say go out there and kill the forest, everybody, today. They call that overburden. And your job that day is to get rid of the overburden because it's burdening the surface of the earth where you want to get to this oil. And so this is what they do to the forest. They completely scrape everything away, all the animals, all the trees, whatever, to get this out of it. So instead of turning Mars into Earth right now, we're practicing turning Earth into Mars right now. But the good news is our stuff stays very cheap so long as we do this. Like there's a lot of sales going on. You ever had this thing where it's like it's cheaper to buy something new off the internet than to figure out where the hell it is in your house? Like you know it's in a drawer somewhere, it's in the garage somewhere, but it would just be cheaper and easier to do next day delivery on a brand freaking new one off the internet. It's convenient, but it comes at a price, and that is that those products all come from somewhere. And we're forgetting that. They come from nature. When nature is turned into those products. So we're a long ways off from where we need to be having a regenerative economy. I came up with this very authoritative graph in my hotel room. This is human consciousness. So at the bottom, there's no awareness that we're destroying the planet. At the next rung, we're considering not destroying the planet. At the next rung, we're trying to not destroy the planet. And eventually, in the far future, I don't know how long this is going to take, but we're working to regenerate the planet. I'd say right now, the majority of the human species is somewhere between the first and second one. Either no awareness that the planet is being destroyed, or just considering maybe doing something about it. I tried to sum all this up in a tweet one time, what the problem is. So tech people love money, money people love tech, but neither understands anything about nature, and nature lovers fear money and technology. So I witnessed this. The problem is that the way to preserve the planet and have an economy and occupations requires individuals who are comfortable with all these things and know something about the planet as well. We've all heard about the division of labor in economic theory, right? It's this theory that everything gets better thanks to the division of labor, because we all used to have to be farmers, but then as long as somebody's a chemical engineer and somebody's a patent lawyer and somebody else is a janitor, then we can have the division of labor, and that leads to these complex products and services in society. That is true, except for the fact that it is possible to divide too many times. So we've divided the division of labor so many times that almost no individual actually knows what's going on, big picture-wise, with the planet. Everybody assumes it is somebody else's job to take care of the planet. It's somebody who studied forestry or somebody in the environmental sciences department, and they're underpaid and their jobs are very boring, and none of us really want to often do those things. But it's nobody's job right now to take care of the planet as a whole. It's like, it's not a job category even. And that's a problem. So when I was a 23-year-old in college, I was studying computer science, and I wanted to be an entrepreneur, and I realized that the public transport system in America was pretty bad. We had a lot of buses, but they were all empty. Like, nobody wanted to use them. And so I realized that instead of going into video games or search or whatever all the friends of mine were doing in computer science, which was really trendy and sexy at the time, I decided I was going to take my computer skills to this Dumby world of public transport in America. I created this company called TransLoc, where we, for the first time, 12 years ago in history, we put GPS transponders on public transport vehicles so the public could figure out where they are and actually use them. We also showed the transport agencies where it was worth putting stops and where to put routes so that we didn't have to turn more of the planet into buses unnecessarily. We'd rather have fewer buses full of people than a bunch of empty buses going up and down the street. That actually worked out pretty well. So by doing that, it left me financially independent, to be honest. It left me with enough money to do whatever I wanted, frankly, for the rest of my life. And it also got me this fancy award. The company was given an award from the White House, and I was named a champion of change, because in over 300 cities now, this technology is being used to increase public transport usage. And just last year, Fast Company named this company one of the top 10 most innovative companies in transportation, right next to Uber and Tesla. So all that, because I just did the first step. So I didn't know any of that would happen, but I'm glad I followed my heart and did something that I thought would be good with those computer science skills. And these are lessons here that I'm trying to share, which are take your skills out of your industry that you've been trained in and take them to an industry that is completely bereft of those skills, an industry that you have no chance of not being able to make an impact in because they are dying to have what you know. That's what it was like to take computer science to the world of public transport a few years ago. After that, after I had some free time, I realized that my family was sick. My family members were sick with diabetes and these other kind of things, and I wanted to get answers to that, like why is everybody sick in America? Turns out we're not eating real food in America, that's a problem. So I decided to learn about the food system, and I realized I knew nothing about the food system. My friends didn't know anything about the food system. And I saw an abandoned lot one day downtown in the city, and I could just see an urban farm there. I'd been in an urban farm once, and it just felt like a little slice of heaven on earth. So my friends and I started a 1-acre urban farm, and to this day, tens of thousands of people a year visit this urban farm and begin to learn about the food system, how to grow food, and how to put healthy things into their body. I also realized that electric cars would be part of the future. So about 8 years ago, I had this crazy idea after test driving one of these that almost nobody had ever driven an electric car. And the only electric car worth a damn was this one being made by this company nobody had ever heard of called Tesla at the time. So I bought one of these, and and I rented it out to the public so that hundreds of people could experience what it would be like to drive an electric car. This was back when literally nobody had driven anything electric other than a golf cart. So again, the point in all these crazy stories are, there are things to do with yourself, there are activities to get up to, there are businesses to start. That can have an impact on the environment, on people's perception, and on people's consciousness. That all took me about 10 years. And I realized that at that rate, even though I seem like a somewhat productive person, at that rate we're really not going to pull out of the nosedive with the environment. And so I've been searching for the answer of how do you actually address the increase of human consciousness, how do you address the environmental issues in an immediately practical way, and how do you create a new economy that's actually based on regenerative principles instead of extractive ones. And the crazy idea I came up with is actually to make soil together. So why treat the planet like garbage when we can make soil instead? And what I mean is, almost all the food waste in the world right now goes into landfills, goes into the trash. That's literally treating the planet like garbage. And when I was doing the urban farm and a community garden before that, I saw people having transformative experiences. When they would bring their compost to me, because I learned to make compost and nourish the garden and nourish the farm, I actually went door to door and I'd ask people to bring their compost to this box that I made, and I'd walk them out to it and show them where it was outside. And week after week, I actually witnessed that they were experiencing a transformation in their consciousness. Like they just started having these kind of almost spiritual experiences when they brought their food scraps to these heaps, these compost piles. And eventually it hit me that the human species right now has almost zero examples of human life in harmony with nature. They have almost zero examples of the earth regenerating itself. And by bringing their banana peels and their coffee grounds and their eggshells to this pile, and then watching them all disappear and be replaced with jet black soil, they were having a novel experience, what I would call an essential experience, that is currently missing from the human experience, which is why it's so easy to destroy the planet and so hard to take care of it. So the plan is to scale globally a movement of making soil together. I see a future where the soil maker in your neighborhood is actually a revered role. I see a future where we're going to want to actually support the soil maker. We're going to donate to them a few euro a month for their services. And then in that little way, we'll begin to model what a regenerative economy would look like. So, I am out of time, but this is how to get in touch with me. I would say that the Make Soil movement, it's a nonprofit, it's the global movement, and we're in need of just anything you can imagine, developers, especially artists and graphic designers, to have this kind of massive worldwide campaign, make soil, not war, all kinds of clever stuff we're gonna get out there, until we completely end the practice of treating the planet like garbage. So thank you, everyone.
Thank you. Just some questions for you. Let's start off right here.
Yes.
When you talk about regenerative economy and stuff like this, the ideas that you talk about, for some reason, they seem very hip, Silicon Valley, first world problems to me. I'm from Pakistan, and we don't have these sort of problems where you talk about because we actually do regenerate. We don't do it with digital. Digital even creates more of the garbage that you're talking about. We have, we reuse a lot of stuff. My mobile phone right now has been repaired 10 times. You cannot do that over here. We have these urban farms in literally every home. We have small cars. So why don't you take the principles, or have you ever thought about taking something from over there, Pakistan, India, Sri Lanka, all of these countries over there, which rely on very, very little, let's call it new stuff, and rely on repairing, reusing, recycling, and a lot of that,
yes.
and bring it to this sort of...
Yes, thank you, thank you. I've absolutely thought of that, and I share your passion. Though I could afford almost anything you can conceive of in the world, I have an 8-year-old MacBook Pro that I got out of like a friend's garbage can, right? I'm with you, I repair old electronics. Problem is, as you've witnessed, over here in Europe, as in America, that is not the dominant culture. And so while I'm aware of that, the question becomes, how do you shift the dominant culture, which is currently the economic powerhouse of the world? And sadly, with each passing year, your culture back in Pakistan is less like the one you're talking about and more like the one over here. So how do you reverse that trend? And my job, my role in the world right now is to be the interface between the healing practices, the harmonious practices that the indigenous people have learned. How do you build that bridge to the worlds of Silicon Valley, of Europe, of the power centers of the world? And sadly, you do it by looking like me, having an award, and going around and saying stuff like this. So I'm doing the best I can, but I truly wish more people would pay attention to what's working around the world. Yes? You, sorry, in the front.
I think that a big part of the problem is that humanity shifts more into living in big cities, and as you said, we are not connected with nature, and I think that's part of the problem. In cities we are so disconnected from nature. Here in Munich it's not possible to grow soil because you do not need the soil in the city. And there's this global shift that, as you said, we have in Pakistan, in India, and all the third world countries, they are shifting into leaving the country to go into the cities. And what do you think about this? Because I think, yeah, it's not really sustainable.
Yeah, so that was part of what I was trying to prove with the urban farm. And as you mentioned, these things are hip and trendy now, but these were 8-10 years ago that I was doing some of these things that weren't quite as hip and trendy then. Our whole vision of the rural places where nature is, and the parks are where the national forests where preservation happens, and then cities are a place where all ecology is destroyed without question. This needs to change. We call those sacrifice zones. We'll just put all the people in one place where they do a maximum amount of damage and where nature has no chance, but thank goodness we have hopefully a national park somewhere in the country. That has to end. Eventually a city needs to be a place where where nature, where ecology are integrated. And actually we enjoy when they are. So the benefits, the payoff of that seems to not be there in the beginning when you run the numbers of the real estate, the amount of rent you could get for the square footage, and all these kind of terrible metrics that societies are designed by. But in the long run, we actually enjoy as humans when we can walk outside our houses and have more trees. We can walk outside and have food. There's actually, even in a city like this, there's an incredible amount of wasted space where food could be growing. And so the secret plan is that when people start ending up with soil from the soil-making activity, they will now have what I call earth empathy. Because to be honest, when I started the public transport company, part of it is I just felt sorry for those buses. They were ugly, they were dumpy, they got 3 miles to the gallon, and I knew we had taken the forest and the ground and turned it into this ugly bus. I just wanted to do something kind for the planet because it had been kind to me. I believe that experience of earth empathy will scale as people begin to take the first step in the regenerative practice of making soil together. And the second thing they will wonder once they have all this beautiful soil is, what do I do with it? And then they will realize there's some bushes that they could pull out, they could put the soil there, we could be growing food together instead. But city life needs to look entirely different than it does today. The woman in the back.
Thanks for the talk, I really, really liked it. I agree with a lot of the things that you said, and I scrolled through your Twitter that said that you do not agree with a lot of technological solutions to restore nature. So, the way I understood it. So, my question
Do you have the exact quote there?
Nature will restore itself to stop destroying it, and it will, which of course is the case.
There's another part. It says something we don't need any more we don't need
That's my question.
Techno-capitalist disfigurements to heal society. Yes.
Okay. Do you think we're still at a stage where businesses can kind of reverse global warming, or do we actually need techno-fixes to extract carbon dioxide from atmosphere? Like, are we still at a stage where businesses can do it?
We need technology in harmony with the environment. And there's a longer talk that I don't have time to give. There's a book I could write about it. But humans, when we became technologists, was not when we used the first tools. It was actually the moment when we stopped putting the stick down. Because for hundreds of thousands of years, we actually carried the stick. We would poke the honeycomb with the stick, and then we'd start eating the honey and we'd leave the stick. But at some point, we decided that was a very good stick, and I was going to keep it and maybe even improve it. And that's when technology began. And humans and technology have had a symbiosis for a long time. It gave us power over the animals and it made us a rich species. And to this day, that's sort of the dialogue between technology, business, and humans. Humans say to technology, we will make you perfect and proliferate you, and technology says to humans, we will make you rich and powerful. And that has been the story of thousands of years. I personally have profited from that. But at some point, that symbiosis will need to include nature as well. And there's a fine line I'm making in that tweet, which is that there are technological interventions that harmonize human life with nature, and then there are technological, I don't know what to call them, but they're like a sleight of hand. They're like greenwashing. They're marketing campaigns that say that this piece of technology will heal the planet when it will not. It's just a new thing to buy and for people to feel less guilty about. And there are all kinds of people, especially like in the world of genetic modified foods and whatnot, who actually know nothing about nature. They know a lot about genes, they know a lot about cells, and they actually know nothing about ecosystems. And I believe ecosystem awareness is not just a fact, it's a type of consciousness. That there's a day when you realize what an ecosystem is, the massive complexity you can never come to understand, and that ecosystems must be protected, and you can't do that with simplistic technologies. You actually have to begin to understand nature and have ecosystem consciousness yourself, and from that place, to create legitimate solutions, however technological they may need to be. The man in the front here, middle.
Maybe you already answered like a part of the question. So the question would be, do you think like environmental protection and capitalism is somehow like a contradiction?
It wouldn't be if externalized costs were accounted for. So capitalism would work brilliantly if the unpriced externalities were accounted for. So right now, they try to keep prices very low so you'll buy more, but if they were made to include in the cost of goods the amount of damage the environment is taking, then products would cost more, you'd buy less of them. The economy wouldn't keep doing this though, it would kind of be more like this, which is actually okay. So they're not in conflict so long as unpriced externalities are accounted for. Right now they're not. The fast food joint sells a $1 hamburger. There is no way you can create a $1 hamburger, ship it, treat the animal well, and have it be something good for a human body. It's impossible. It should not exist. But if the externalities are accounted for, the price of meat should cost whatever meat actually costs, not what it does today. So, and I can speak more about that later. To the right there.
Have you by chance read the book *Sapiens: A Brief History of Humankind*?
I haven't, but you're like the 15th person to recommend it to me.
Anyway, it introduces a concept that innovations, for example, agriculture, benefit us in the short term, but actually harm us in the long run. And there's other examples you could name, for example, Facebook, that gives us like all this communication skills, but like detachable from each other. What's your opinion on that? All this great innovation that we come up with, that just like make life so much better, actually destroy humanity and our planet?
Very likely it does, but the best thing that we can do is take the next step forward and then become more aware as the consequences become apparent to us. So take the agriculture example, absolutely. Like something like a domesticated animal's brain shrinks like 30% once you take it out of the wild, right? We did that because we got tired of chasing animals around in nature. But in the future, you can imagine where we have drones, and already with the gun and whatnot, you actually don't need domestication. We could put our food system, all of our meat supply, entirely back on a wild meat supply, which is a completely unheard of concept. But we just stopped to notice that we actually don't need to fence animals into a tiny little paddock anymore. We became so advanced that that model is actually archaic. But it takes awareness, and more than awareness, I know this because I've lived on farms, I've studied the food system on farms, and I've also gone to the woods and sat in a tree and shot a deer and eaten it 2 hours later. I've really explored the food system and what are we taking for granted. We need to challenge all the assumptions of the old ways. Instead of these micro innovations that aren't really innovations, we're at a point now where we need to rethink the entire thing. And it actually evolves along a spiral. I'd like to write a book about this. But technology is on a spiral. And right now, it's actually very far from the starting point of harmony with nature. But you'll see it's coming around again, and we want our technology now to fade into the background. We want our computers to look like smooth stones. That's what these Apple laptops look like, more like natural. So technology is coming back. And on a spiral, something funny happens, which is you start to approach the starting point, which means it has characteristics of the old way, but at a higher level. And so actually, if we were to truly innovate, whatever it takes, take a bunch of mushrooms, go for a walk in the woods, I don't know, but if we were to truly innovate, we would see that there are many of these practices now that it's time to completely let go of and to rethink them from the original principles of nature with our new technology and our new understanding. So I can speak more about that in depth later. I'm probably out of time, but I'd love to take more questions.
Two more questions.
Two more questions. I think the guy in the back has been further than you, sir. That's you, yeah, the guy just turned around.
So, when you talk about technology and how it's actually taking over and people are not thinking about nature anymore, but at the same time, like, you have to consider the technology itself is accelerating at a very big pace, at a very large pace, and consumerism along with it is also increasing, but like, it's unnatural to assume that people will not buy the latest iPhone next year, because they will, because they've been doing it for so many years.
But I don't.
But
Somebody else here doesn't. They buy a new phone when they need one.
yeah, that's true. But the general thing among communities is that, like,
Yeah.
that's the trend.
Yes.
And that's only natural because people want to be more comfortable every year, right? So how would you actually propose to sort of change this?
It seems natural to you because they're caught in a system where they spend 8 hours a day doing a job they don't like, and they're actually in a lot of pain, and they spend 2 hours in traffic every day, and they'll do anything to numb the pain when they get home. So believe it or not, most of my time hasn't been spent doing anything that I've actually shown you on the screen here today. Most of my time has been spent studying human consciousness, how the human being actually elevates and enlightens. And I believe enlightenment is a natural state of the human being, is a thing the human being can return to. Buying the next phone when you don't need it is not a natural state of the human being, it is a coping mechanism, because the human mind is in pain, because humanity doesn't know what the point of life is anymore. It's lost touch with it, and it's not being satisfied in a deep and instinctual way anymore. And so if we change the societal institutions we're involved in, and again, my Make Soil project is the best hope I have right now, because the person who actually falls in love with making soil and actually touches the living soil they've created will be less tempted to buy the new iPhone. They will be in less pain.
Yeah, well, thanks for your talk. I like the idea that you want to enlighten the whole mankind. And my question is, do you think big companies like, for example, Amazon, Apple, can help to improve the way of people conceiving or perceiving nature and ecological processes? For example, I read an article today about Amazon's projects in, I think, Seattle, about biospheres in the city. So do you think there's potential in big companies trying to get the kind of nature into the consciousness?
Of course there's potential there. The problem is that many public companies are owned by no one. They're owned by a bunch of random people who are selling the stock at a higher price than they bought it for. Most corporate charters have a line in the corporate charter that says your primary responsibility is to the profits, literally the monetary profits of the shareholders. This is why you see the new resurgence, the new surge of social corporations, benefit corporations, all these new structures that have one little line in it that says that the company's management is allowed to make choices other than pure profit as the top priority. So this is again a systemic problem. We created the joint stock company some hundreds of years ago so that we could all own a share in a ship when it went off sailing, and that was a way to distribute the risks and the rewards. But somewhere along the way, nobody was left in charge of any of these institutions. So business can absolutely be a force for good, and I absolutely encourage every one of you here to become as rich and powerful as you possibly can in some way that makes the planet, that is being good for the planet, and to use that capital and the reach of that organization to change the dominant culture. But I wouldn't put as much hope in the Apples and the Googles and the Facebooks as I would in each one of you here today choosing to do something different with your time than to go work for them.
Thank you. So, thank you to our four wonderful speakers. A lot of this would not have been possible without a single